February 17th, 2025. Today, we're going to talk about two things, AI and crypto. First, let's talk about AI. JD Vance had a recent speech in Munich, I think it was the Munich Security Conference, in which he laid out, I think it was like a 4-step plan for US global AI dominance. And I think on its face, US global AI dominance is a good thing. It's important for the United States strategically to have a say in how the technological landscape of artificial intelligence develops over the next, over this upcoming century. It's very important. Now, whether one goes through an open source route or a closed source route, I lean closer to the open source route, but it is very tricky, right? Because of the amount of impact artificial intelligence is going to have. Now, when we're talking about the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have and is inarguably already having as far as the productivity gains that companies are seeing, and then also the automation that companies and people are experiencing, it really hits a nerve for a lot of folks. And people are, I think, reasonably untrusting of those in power saying, hey, AI is going to provide more productivity and minimize the amount of jobs that are lost, and is going to be this boom to society. And those people that are not trusting, there's a few different angles in which they approach this issue. And oftentimes, what I hear, especially from proponents on the left, is that regulation needs to be a big topic when discussing artificial intelligence. One of those proponents is Crystal from Breaking Points. And while I agree with Crystal on a few different issues, primarily that the wealth difference is one of the more core struggles that face us today, and it's more important than, in my mind, it's more important than the race difference. I think like the gender difference. I think it's more important than that too. Class, I suppose they kind of go hand in hand. But it's really, especially because America is like a capitalist country, and we've moved away from the Christian roots towards a more secular lifestyle or secular way of belief in which the dollar is king. How the dollar works and moves its way through the society becomes incredibly important, right? So I agree with Crystal on that front, and I think that approaching the way that U.S. domestic policy and domestic relations work from that fundamental area and saying, okay, one, how can we provide more, not only opportunity, but more return to the investor, the American citizen, because we're investing our time, energy, money into making America into what it is. How can we return more financial opportunity to those investors without incentivizing behavior that is not productive? That's important. It's very important, and I think that's a key question that more folks should ask themselves, and we should have more dialogue about. But on the flip side, when I hear the words regulation as it pertains to AI, oftentimes the argument, or at least one of the arguments that was used by Crystal the other day, is that artificial intelligence is similar to nuclear weapons, and the same way that we came together globally to regulate nuclear weapons, we should do something similar to that with artificial intelligence. And I think that that is an argument filled with a ton of holes that it's laughable and a little bit irritating to hear. Because though artificial intelligence and nuclear weapons and technology both have a seismic impact on how I guess people relate to each other, the distribution avenues are completely different, which would make global regulation of the kind that is being called for on the AI piece that is analogous to the nuclear weapons piece incredibly violent and incredibly totalitarian in a way that would absolutely smother the freedoms of people around the world. The last thing that I want is for the conversation around AI regulation to be focused on global governance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Because when you think about nuclear weapons, one, the technology to make a nuclear weapon is incredibly hard. Two, not only like to understand how to make a nuclear weapon, but then also to get the materials is difficult, and then to put the materials together in the right spot is difficult, and then to distribute those materials that are functioning in a nuclear capacity to other people is difficult, and to duplicate all of those things is difficult. Like it's an economy of atoms problem, and the economy of atoms compared to the economy of bits, which is an idea that Peter Thiel talks about often as he discusses kind of the stagnation of the world in 3D space versus the acceleration of the world in digital space. That difference is incredibly key to this AI conversation, and that difference is what terrifies me when people are talking about top-down regulatory control, thinking about using what was effective in technology that is based in the economy of atoms and trying to replicate that to the economy of bits. How, for example, is somebody going to go to nation or how is somebody going to go to some random kid, let's say sitting in I don't know, in Germany or whatnot, in his computer and trying to make some AI? How are we going to regulate that person from developing some AI engine or whatnot that is able to automate, I don't know, let's say call workers, right? Like sales folks, how are you going to say like, no, we want to slow the rate of progress down, and we need to be able to find that person that's working on that AI tool in their garage, go into their garage, open the garage, take their tool, and then throw that person in jail, right? It's an idea that really stuck with me that Eric Weinstein talked about when talking about utopianism, is when you think about your utopian ideal, right? That's where you want to go. And then you think about where you are right now. The question that you should ask yourself is, how much violence is required to take me from where I am right now to where I want to go? And is that amount of violence required palatable for my utopian ideal? Because because regime change, actual change is violent. If you think about nature and you think about glaciers, you have glacier plate and it's calm, and over the course of weeks to months, you have the sun beating on it, and different types of fissures begin to go in through the plate, and it seems like nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, something happens, and the entire plate just gets sheared off. That's tons of ice just gone into the ocean. If you were standing on it, boom, you're done, right? If you're underneath it, boom, you're done. That's a violent act. That's what change is. It's going from one thing to another, 0 to 1, right? The amount of violence that would need to be brought down upon the system in order to regulate artificial intelligence in the way that proponents like Crystal Ball say that we need to regulate artificial intelligence, just like how we regulated nuclear weapons and nuclear technology. It's a mind-boggling amount of violence if you really think about it. Moreover, it's not even to say that that type of regulation would even work, because when we talk about nuclear technology, people look around and like, oh my gosh, why are we still like, I live in Texas, right? Texas experienced a cold spell a few years ago that knocked out the entire technological grid, and we think about, oh wow, why is it that we don't have folks that have come together to make the electricity grid more robust? Why is that? That's an important question, right? One of the ways that we've tried to become green, right, more resilient, is solar, wind, geothermal. But the nuclear method, which if you talk to many people today that are actually experts in the field, they would say that nuclear technology has advanced way more and way further than the Chernobyl-esque technologies in like the 1900s, right? It's advanced to the point where you can have where it's a lot more compact. It's smaller. It produces more energy. It's more safe. It's more effective. If the regulations weren't such, it could be distributed and disseminated throughout society and absolutely change how we use energy and make energy use easier, cheaper, stable, and up-level the whole society. That's that's the argument that proponents of nuclear technology use, and even proponents that, like, people that aren't necessarily proponents, understand that at this point the technology has evolved to such an extent that if the regulations were lax or decrease as far as the kind of the vice-like grip in which it was initially implemented, things would change pretty quickly, right? And so I bring it up to say, like, even when regulations were passed within the nuclear age, the way that they were passed was such that it hamstrung not only the United States but the rest of the world as far as moving into a green direction or off coal, off oil. And in that same vein, the biggest proponents of climate these days, which are primarily also on the left, that say, oh, we're anti-oil, anti-big oil, like anti-coal, we want to be clean and whatnot. They're on this. If that's the real goal, they're on the same side of the nuclear folks, and so then they would be advocating for the like repealing of the regulations. But the thing is, when you put a law into place, it's so hard to change that law. One thing that Elon mentioned that I thought was incredibly poignant was that the government doesn't have a delete function. The government just adds on, just as an addition function, right? You pass a law, it goes into the books. You pass another law, it goes into the books. You pass another law, it goes into the books. It's really hard for government to take a step back and say, okay, over the past 10 years, you've passed 10,000 laws. Which of these aren't good and need to be removed? And which of these are and need to continue? And which of these do we need to modify? It doesn't work that way. It's kind of just like you're painting it on a wall and you're just adding more and more layers of paint, right? And so when you take that in mind and you're talking about AI regulation, we're talking about a technology that, one, is in the world of bits rather than the world of atoms. Two, the pathway of regulation, even in the world of atoms, when talking about nuclear, hamstrung society to such an extent that the whole flying cars or incredibly cheap energy is now seen more as a pipe dream than anything, and the pathways to opening up that future has diminished ultimate, like in mass amounts. And three, the amount of violence that one would need to exert on an entire system in order to make things conform to its will is massive and terrifying. It just, when I put these things together, I just my mind, I start to short circuit, because the problem is more difficult than just slap a regulation onto it. Especially when we're living in a society where trust in government and regulators is at an all-time low, and technology is moving incredibly quickly. So it's not even like we're working in a vacuum, right? If you were to regulate on the United States front, who's to say that China doesn't do what it wants to do, or Russia doesn't do what it wants to do? Even amongst allies, when we're talking about nuclear weapons, the United States wanted to limit the amount of nuclear weapons that were in circulation, but somehow Israel may or may not have the nuclear weapons, and we still don't know whether or not they do. And not only do we not know whether or not they do, there's no way that we will ever be able to find out unless someone within the Israeli community leaks it, and at that point that person's a pariah and their entire family's life is destroyed. And that was in a regulatory environment around nuclear weapons that were trying to stop the proliferation of them, right? There's just so many holes and so many in different levels. And so what I think, as far as approach, and this also ties into the crypto piece as well, with this whole Libra nonsense that just came out of Argentina, is really leaning into radical openness and radical transparency. And I think those two keys are tenets that the American populace should demand and expect from their leaders. Now, people talk about national security risks and this and that type of things. And so there is some gray zones, right? But when we're talking about technology to this extent, especially on the internet, where there's democratized access, so to speak, there should be a radical openness and radical transparency element to the creation, to the propagation, to the upgrade, and whatnot of artificial intelligence. And some people then mention, like DeepSeek, the AI out of China. They compare how open source DeepSeek is compared to the closed source nature of OpenAI. And I think on face value, that comparison is correct. But then if you dig a little bit deeper and you ask yourself, well, how separate are the government agencies of China from the technology and business communities of China, and you compare the degree of separation there to the degree of separation of the United States, and you find that while one might say that in the US version there's less open source and it's more closed source, at least right now, and the Chinese version is more open source and whatnot. Like, it's not open source to the extent that one could use the Chinese code and know exactly all that went into it. It's more like they have a particular code, they put it out, allowing it to propagate, because in part they're behind from everybody else. This is exactly what Facebook did. When you're behind in a race, in a technological race, it does not behoove you to keep everything tight. It actually benefits you to learn off of the knowledge of everybody else and to put the information out there and say, hey, world, here's where we're at. Can you help us get further? Can you play with this? And then you look at how the world's playing with it, and then you take the good and you remove the bad and you add it to your thing and it improves. And in that process, then you begin to catch up. But when people talk about the open source nature of the Chinese version compared to the closed source nature of open AI, they almost use it as a moralistic argument, right? It's like, oh, China's open source, OpenAI is closed source. We gotta fix this. I think it's really funny because like the Chinese Communist Party is not one it's not a party that is like is moralistic in any means, right? I ask myself how much money was used in corporate espionage to get the secrets to create the DeepSeek model in the first place, or to purchase the energy to run and train the model, right? It's not like they just came out. It's not like they were underneath a rock and then they woke up one day and they said, "Oh, we see OpenAI. We got to go figure out a way to make this. We're gonna use $6 million, and we're gonna with that $6 million make our own version." No, it's not. One, they're standing on the shoulders of giants as far as the technology development is concerned, and two, they have a huge like government apparatus that is funneling information, money, power, connections, all those pieces, because they recognize that if you have godlike level technology that is just being propagated, you need to figure out a way to get your piece of the pie. And unfortunately, just in a global sense, we're in a situation where it's like a race, right? Like if you're walking in a forest and a bear pops up and it's you and your buddy, like, do you need to be faster than the bear or do you need to be faster than your buddy? And saying like, oh well, man, it's actually not really fair, man. Okay, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So we'll say 3, 2, 1, go, and I won't push you down, and you won't push me down, so we can be fair and we can really duke this out in a world that's really a realpolitik where there's no higher power to really come down and say, you do this, you do that. No one's getting struck by lightning. It's foolish. It's foolish and it's silly. It's absolutely silly. And so when speaking of, while it would be ideal, ideal state, right? There's some benevolent regulator out there that has only the U.S. population at heart, and they are able to make rules and that works, see whether or if they don't work, able to turn those rules back and make new rules and continue testing in that way. It just is too, the government moves too slowly for that to be a reality. So what's much more likely to happen is that the government will create rules. The rules will be crappy. It'll hamstring businesses in particular ways, advance others in different ways. And most likely those businesses or companies that are being advanced had some insight into creating the rules in the first place. And in the long run, the society does not actually make the leap that people thought it would make, because the free market ingenuity that was initially harnessed at the outset was asphyxiated by the power players that had their hands on the levers of power. And I think that's, you kind of have to pick your poison, right? In many ways. And for me, I don't trust the goodwill of those that are in positions of power to make laws and whatnot that are good for me. And the only way that I would trust them, is if they're a funny thought that just came to mind, if they just like live streamed all of it. They just live streamed every conversation, that as much information as they could, put it out into the ether and allowed people to go view it and make a decision for themselves whether or not the choices that are being made actually align with the public's best interest, and whether or not there's actually rigorous, well thought out discussion and argument to come to a consensus, versus just like behind closed door wheeling and dealings that only benefit a select few rather than the entirety of the population at large. And if they were to live stream that, I would watch that stream and I would pay attention to what's going on in those streams and see what happens. So those were some thoughts on the AI piece. Now, the crypto piece is something that has been on my mind, is this Libra issue. Libra, this it's like a meme coin that came out of Argentina. It's the latest rug pull, basically, where you have these people that launched a token, got Javier Milei, the Argentinian president, to co-sign the token. The token ran up to really like $4 billion and then crashed to less than 100 million, so to speak. And then the designer of the token, or the strategist of the launch, is left sitting with $100 million. A lot of people lost money. There's a lot of people made a lot of money, but everybody's really confused and discombobulated as to like how this stuff happened. Apparently, Dave Portnoy put like $5 million into it, lost the 5 million, and then the people like that were inside the strategy and the coin reimbursed Dave Portnoy with his 5 million that he lost. But the random person that bought into this, when thinking that it was a legitimate thing, lost and may have put, I don't know, thousands of dollars into it, but in a proportional amount, it's a large amount of money to them, is not getting reimbursed at all. And I think that's, I think it's really sad. First of all, it's incredibly sad. It's devastating to those folks. And I think that it's just another reason why within the crypto space, celebrity coins and people coins are absolutely toxic. Those are the worst coins that you can ever put your money into, one. And two, these sort of meme pump dot fun type coins that essentially anybody can go and make the coin and then rug pull, that's also terrible. Just terrible. So celebrity coins, horrible. Pump dot fun coins, also horrible. Both of these are just like gambling off the wazoo. And I think my thinking is that closer to Murad's thinking, that eventually retail is going to begin to wisen up to the fact that quick get rich quick schemes or whatnot, it's not going to work in the crypto space. There's just too many coins getting produced at one time. What really matters is communities. The core thing about cryptocurrency is community. And I think that crypto and social media are gonna do a little merge. They're gonna get a little closer, you know. They're gonna get a little tied, a little marriage is gonna happen between crypto and social media. It's already happening. I mean, most crypto people are like the biggest social media folks out there. And what's interesting about social media is the creators can monetize, but the viewers can't really monetize. But crypto could allow the viewers to find a way to monetize themselves and make like a flywheel effect. Like if you're a part of a community of a community token, let's say Giga, or let's say SPX 6900. If you're part of a community token and you believe in the ethos of the mission or the core ideal of the particular coin, either like masculinity with Giga or financial freedom and democratization with SPX, and you are with like-minded individuals that share your values and share your beliefs and share your ethos, and you begin to work together with these individuals, this might be the first this is, in my perspective, this is like the first step on the network state thesis that Balaji Srinivasan posited, where in his so the network state, if you're not aware, is basically um, the, the Balaji's kind of view of where networks are going to move into next, right? Like right now we have nations, which are, like sovereign nations. And then you have like nationless states. You have different ethnicities that might be living in a particular nation. But the thing about politics is that it's kind of like an organization of power, right? Politics has three three forms, like Aristotle mentions. He says there's rule by the one, power consolidates into one, power consolidates into the few, and power consolidates throughout the many. It's almost like states of matter, so to speak. And with the network state, like right now, we're used to nation states moving around, doing their things. We're also become used to like international institutions and uh, and and corporations going around doing their things. But there's not really a way for the individual to combine into a collective, and then using that combined power of the collective, you know, exert their will into the universe. Cryptocurrency, through its decentralized nature, allows for multiple people who don't necessarily know each other, don't necessarily trust each other, to purchase and believe in one thing. And through the power of decentralization and network effects, that particular thing or ethos grows to the extent that it allows for security throughout the entire ecosystem. And once you begin to add smart contracts onto that, which allow you to essentially make essentially smart contracts allows you to make laws in a transparent way that everybody can vote on and agree on. And once those laws pass, then they're passed into perpetuity or stopped if somebody wants to, repeal it or whatnot. But the cool thing is it's transparent. So everybody knows what's going on, and there's no sort of finagling the system. And so, how does this relate to network states? Well, a network state is like a network of a group of people who all believe in a particular thing. Let's say Bitcoin, for example. They all have bought into Bitcoin to some extent, and then they leverage their Bitcoin positions to purchase things in the real world, buildings, land, whatever. And then they make a decree amongst those people who believe in the thing that says, hey, if you believe in, uh, thanks for being a shareholder or community member of our community. Let's say everybody of community gets one NFT, which is essentially like an ID badge or whatnot. Then if you own a certain amount of this particular thing, and you have an ID badge, then you can get access into particular either land, buildings, cars, whatever, events, organizations, you name it, that are co-sponsors or co-signed by our community. And the point of any organism, the point of the network state will be to achieve its number one prerogative. Now, that prerogative may be different depending on what the community is about. Some network states, like the Bitcoin network, is mostly like financial freedom, growth, that sort of thing. The SPX network is like the meme coin version of the Bitcoin network. The Giga Chad network is mostly about like masculinity, working out, strength, those sorts of things. There are other sorts of networks as well, like the Apu network is kind of about cute frogs. It's very cute. I love Apu. It's very cute. The USA network is about all things USA, right? So you have a bunch of these sorts of networks, and I think that meme coins are people are going retail. I think retail will begin to realize that the power of meme coins isn't in the pump.fun or like the celebrity coins, but are in the true believers, the true networks, right? The people who like actually care about this. The people who aren't trying to scam you or whatnot, and actually are trying to build something, trying to grow, trying to commune with people, trying to do cool things, trying to live exhilarating lives, trying to learn, trying to make friends, trying to build cool things, right? Retail is going to realize the that meme coins or crypto in general, utility tokens, one thing, but then the people are the other. And when you purchase a coin, you're purchasing part of a network, part of a people. It's kind of like when you decide where you want to live in the real world. You have a bunch of cities and you pick like, okay, well, do I want, beachfront kind of surfer people to be by? Do I want mountain, kind of clean, crisp air people to, places to live by? And like, even in those places, it's like, well, do I want to be downtown? Do I want to be in a suburb? All these you're making value judgments on the environment and the people. And the same thing in the community, in the economy of atoms occurs in the economy of bits. And the way that occurs in the economy of bits is through meme coins. So this Libra stuff, this like this toxic, just morass that's being spewed every day as people make pump.fun coins, trying to make $1 million in like 20 minutes. If that's your game, do it, but be warned that if that's your game, you need to be on all the time. Like, you need to focus, you need to bring the same attention that a New York stock or exchange trader brings when they're day trading and they have all the graphs and everything. You need to bring all of that same attention to bear on the particular project. Whereas when people found out about Bitcoin very early, they didn't trade it. They just said, "Oh, okay, cool. I'm just gonna purchase this and I'm gonna wait." Same thing will happen with movement coins, with coins that actually have people that are diehard believers behind it. They're just going to purchase it and they're going to wait. They're just going to wait, and that's it. And eventually, people are going to get so tired of the cheapness that happens on the peripheries that they're going to go towards security in the center, because at the end of the day, you still got to beat inflation. And if you're trying to beat inflation, better beat inflation with people that actually care about the project, not just trying to make, a quick buck or something. But anyways, those are the two topics that I wanted to mention, and how that relates to radical openness, radical transparency, is that pump.fun coins and these sort of like celebrity coins are not radically open, and they're not radically transparent by any means. Those are the most closed, opaque systems that you could purchase into. If you're someone in retail, or if you're looking for good projects, you need to look for good projects with good communities, and one of the core factors of those communities is your decentralization, one, and then the radical openness, two, so you know where everyone is and who everyone is to some extent, and then the radical transparency, where you know what coins are going where, so there's not some sort of wallet with like 80% of the supply just ready to dump it on your head when you decide to buy in once you start seeing the number go up. But anyways, those are the things. AI, it's complicated, it's complex, but we got to be able to think critically about this, rather than start doing a whole save me, oh Father State, and regulator. And crypto, gotta think for yourself. Stop getting finessed by these people and celebrities that are just trying to make a buck off you. Go to the decentralized, open, transparent communities, okay? Take care.